Sup, guys? So back with you. As always, it's Thursday, February 20th. I'm going to try to get this done quick, man. We got NBA back in action. Well, we had it last night, but we have a full slate of NBA. Well, not a full slate either. I wouldn't say not every team is playing, but we have a reasonably sized NBA card tonight to take a look at, or NBA slate to take a look at. College basketball, a bunch of smaller conference games for the most part. I do have 3 plays there, 2 in the NBA, and I'm not going to have a play on the hockey final. Last night, 3-0, baby. I mean, nice bounce back night for me, and it was not difficult at all. All 3 wins were just crazy easy. All 3 of them were blowouts. With Illinois State, and what were the other? I always forget, dude. I don't remember what my wins are, man. Illinois State was one of them. I know Boise State was one of them in the late slate there, where Boise, that game wasn't even as close as the final looked. I think they won by 8 or something, but they were winning that game by like 20 points or somewhere close to that with like 10 minutes to go or something. So New Mexico tried to come back. Didn't happen, obviously. So we hit that one as well. And then we had, what was the other game? Dude, I don't remember anything. I never remember what my plays are. But that's okay. It was a 3-0 night, though. So those 2, and then whatever the hell other play that I had was also like a ridiculously easy winner. I feel like it was in one of the bigger conferences. Was it? Man, it was Missouri over Alabama. How could I forget about that? I was on the biggest game of the night, and I just completely forget about it. Yeah, that's what it was. All right, that was a blowout win as well. Dude, Alabama was shooting well in the game, and Missouri still just wrecked them on the scoreboard. So that tells you Alabama's defense has got some issues. Let's get into this, man. We gotta try to get through this. I do have 3 plays. One of them is in the 6 p.m. game in the American East. Let's go to it right away, man. I'm gonna fire on UMass-Lowell -6.5. Even though this UMass-Lowell team, I have not loved them for a while, man. I mean, they're a local team to me, and I kind of want to root for them, but they've just been struggling. But this UMBC team is worse than UMass-Lowell. There is a revenge factor here for UMBC, but that is the only reason that I could see potentially arguing for UMBC here. And I don't think that's enough because I'm going against them. UMBC did lose at home to this UMass-Lowell team, but UMass-Lowell is just the better team. And I think at this point they've fallen so far that it looks like they're one of the bottom teams in this conference, and that is just not accurate. They're probably one of the top 4 teams in the conference, maybe top 3. Like, they might be better than Vermont still. I don't know. But UMBC, they're also coming off a difficult game, man. They took Bryant to the limit, and Bryant is the team that's leading this conference. It was a 12.5-point spread in this game. UMBC is this huge underdog. They were in this game almost the whole time, man. Bryant had a big lead towards the end of the first half. UMBC came back, took over the lead in the second half, had the lead multiple times in the second half. Down the stretch, game was close all the way, and UMBC just fell short. And now they have to turn around, go up from Bryant, which I think is in Rhode Island, right? I probably should know because they're close to here. Yeah, Smithfield, Rhode Island. Now they have to go up to UMass-Lowell for a second straight road game, coming off that huge game. And yes, I know it is revenge, but they're, again, second straight road game coming off a huge performance. And UMass-Lowell, they have got to be in a really angry mood here, man. They just lost to New Hampshire, who is a terrible team. They're probably better than NJIT, but other than that, I mean, that is just embarrassing. And UMass-Lowell, I believe, actually lost to both teams. Yeah, they lost on the road to both teams. Oh, yeah, and by the way, what did UMass-Lowell do after they had that other embarrassing loss at NJIT? They played UMBC on the road, and they went in and easily beat them. So is this going to be a repeat of it? It may very well be, even though I know UMass-Lowell does have Vermont, Bryan up next. I just don't see how they overlooked this when they've lost 3 games in a row. They lost their last game on this floor at home by 2 points to Albany, who's not that great either. And they've lost 3 games in a row to inferior opponents, 4 of their last 5, all to inferior opponents. But they also had a tough schedule here, really, where they had 4 road games in a span of 5 games. So I think this has got to be kind of like a return to form spot for them, where they got to be angry, man. And they were 9.5-point favorites in this game against this awful UNH team, and they lost the game. UMass-Lowell was winning the game, too, and they just completely, I don't even know how they blew this. They had the game completely in hand the whole way, and then they somehow lost right at the end. They were winning literally the whole time, even though UNH cut it to 1. UMass-Lowell still was able to bring the lead back up, and then after leading by 4 with about a minute to go, they still wound up losing the game. It's just crazy. UMass-Lowell was obviously the better team in this game. They actually had a pretty good shooting performance in this game. Out-rebounded New Hampshire as well. They didn't win the turnover battle, and now that they're going to be back at home, that may be less of an issue. Although UMass-Lowell does like to play fast, I believe, right? I don't even know. Do they? Yeah, they play 71st in tempo. Their defense is awful. Their offense is pretty good, though, pretty efficient. I believe KenPom only has them winning this game by about 5, but I don't even really care. And they're up against I always forget who the teams are that are even involved here, man. They're up against UMBC. Yeah, UMBC, I mean, they're down. They actually play an even faster tempo at 27th. They're way down the bottom in luck index, but they're also really bad defensively. They're decent offensively, so they're almost a mirror image of UMass-Lowell, but they're actually just worse in most respects, even though the luck index is kind of telling you they're a little bit better than they look. But still, we know that UMass-Lowell is the better team here, and you got the better team in a spot where they should be focused, should return to form. And if it is a fast-paced game, like both teams want to play, both teams play good offense and not good defense, you should see the better team have an easier time covering a number like that as a favorite. So that's what we got going on there. Northwestern is playing Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State, I could see arguments that they're not in the greatest spot here because they just played a close game against Michigan where I had Ohio State in that game. I thought it was a bad spot for Michigan. Now they're coming off that big game, and they got UCLA up next, so they have to go on the road. So it is possible they kind of overlook this Northwestern team that really has not been playing well. Ohio State's a huge favorite in this game, though. Northwestern has lost a bunch of games in a row, and it is a game that they'll likely try to get up for. But, of course, we know Northwestern has lost one of their best players, and Barnheiser. He's not coming back. They have not really been that very good at all since he's gone down. Ohio State's up from 9.5 to 10, 63% of tickets, 50% of the cash evenly split, though. So it does look like the market indicators are on the Ohio State side. I don't really see that much of an argument for it. So, I mean, obviously I'm not touching this game. UMass-Lowell, by the way, is up from 5.5 to 6.5. So some money has come in on that side. I don't think there's that much of a difference between those two numbers. As long as you get it below 7, or as I always say, it's the 3-score threshold there, where teams will stop intentionally fouling at that point. Eastern Kentucky is coming off a big win, man, where I got this game wrong. Lipscomb did not get the revenge there, and Eastern Kentucky season-swept Lipscomb, who I still believe to be the best team in the American Sun Conference. That is a huge game, huge win for Eastern Kentucky. Now they're coming off that, and they got to go on the road to face Bellarmine, who they already beat at home, although they only beat them by 3 points as a 14.5-point favorite. So usually when you see that, when you were the way better team and you almost lost that home game, you usually see that better team will actually show up focused for the road game. But in this case, they may very well not, because Bellarmine is just so terrible in this conference. They're coming off the big win, and they got Jacksonville up next, who is a better team as well. And then North Florida, I believe, to finish it out, which North Florida is also not a bad team either. One thing I didn't really take into account was that was the final home game of the season for Eastern Kentucky, so that was one reason why they would step it up. So I do have to pay more attention to that, because that game is basically senior day, senior night, where the team, celebrates the seniors. They get their last home game there. So teams do play well, and it's kind of weird that it's an early senior night for Eastern Kentucky. There were the last 3 games on the road. Bellarmine, they just pulled off their first conference win of the season, and it was an annihilation of Austin Peay, which is just insane. This Bellarmine team hadn't won any conference game this year, and then they pull off a win by almost 30 points against an Austin Peay team that isn't that bad. I mean, they're mediocre. That is just such a weird outlier of a game, man. So does that mean they finally get that monkey off their back and they're going to play well here too? Or does that mean that was such a huge win that they're going to fall back into a letdown spot? Very tough to gauge here. Bellarmine, this is their final home game, though, so it is senior night. They did give the fans the win in their last game, but they may actually that momentum may actually carry into this one. Now they finally got that win, so now they finally have a little bit more confidence. Eastern Kentucky's an 8-point favorite in this one. I just thought that one was kind of interesting to talk about. It's some weird situations going on there. UNC Asheville is at Radford. This is a pretty good game in the Big South between two of the better teams in the conference. UNC Asheville is coming off a close call against Charleston Southern, who's not a very good team. They got by them. Now they got this game against Radford, but up next they do have revenge against Longwood, which is their only basically like unavenged loss in conference play, because they did beat High Point, although they actually lost to High Point after they beat them, so High Point got the revenge against them. But either way, basically the only team they've played, or not basically, yes, the only team that they've played in conference that they haven't beaten is Longwood, and that's what they have up next. They did already beat Radford at home by 7, so does that mean they're going to overlook Radford here? I mean, it's a possibility that does happen. Radford coming off a game against Winthrop, though, which is a pretty big game. They've played 3 big games in a row, and all of them were close against High Point, Longwood, Winthrop. Now they're facing the 4, other than them, the other 4 like best teams in the conference all in a row. So this is not an easy spot for them either, really, in my opinion, even though they did lose their last home game. This is a tough stretch of games for Radford, so I don't like the spot that much for either team, really. Radford is up from 1.5 to 2.5 with juice, so the money does seem to be coming in on their side. I wouldn't really disagree with it, even though I think Asheville should maybe be a bit more of the rested team, because they're just coming off almost losing to an inferior team, whereas Radford is playing a 4th straight difficult game, so tough to say, man. It is tough to say. Bryant and Vermont is going to be a good one in the American East, as Vermont has kind of climbed up a little bit, and they're going to threaten to try to win this conference again, man. Bryant coming off a close win over UMBC, where they didn't play very well. Now they're going out to Vermont, who they did already beat, I believe. Yeah, they beat them by 20 at home. So it is revenge for Vermont. I think this is a big game for both teams anyway. Bryant down the stretch. They have to play Vermont, UMass-Lowell, and Maine all in a row, all on the road. So Bryant's 1-loss conference record is probably not going to remain that way after that stretch of games. They may very well lose 2 out of the 3 of these games. That would be my guess. Vermont coming off that nice win at Maine, who's doing well in this conference as well. So Vermont's coming off a big game. Bryant is coming off a game that was less big, and Vermont does have UMass-Lowell up next, but I do think both teams are going to show up here. Possible Vermont is kind of in the worst rest spot just because they're coming off a bigger game, but the line has dropped from 3 to 1.5 on Bryant there as the road favorite. So oddsmakers telling you Bryant is the better team, but money seems to be coming in on Vermont, kind of in that revenge angle. So again, we will see about that. Troy is a huge favorite against Louisiana. Louisiana, much inferior team, but Troy is coming off basically their biggest win of the year. They went on the road and beat Arkansas State as 6.5-point dogs. Arkansas State, probably the best team in this conference. I hope that they get into the tournament, actually, because they play a fast pace, and they're just kind of a crazy team to watch. They've been kind of moving up the ranks in this conference the last couple of years. They threatened, as like a lower seed, they threatened to win the conference. I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. They looked really good in the conference tournament, coming from out of nowhere. So we'll see what that Arkansas State team does. But Troy's coming off that big win over them. And before that, they just went on the road and beat this Louisiana team by almost 20 points. So it's a very quick road revenge spot for Louisiana as well. It would be a worse spot for Troy if it was a look ahead as well, which it isn't. They only have Coastal Carolina up next, who is not a good team at all. Neither is this Louisiana team, though. So the question is Louisiana so inferior that they're just going to lose this game? I don't know. They're coming off winning against Marshall, which is a decent win. I mean, Marshall's an okay team, and Louisiana, I believe, was able to get the upset there. So, again, a lot of things going on there. My opinion would be to lean against Troy. Troy also plays slow and plays defensively, so laying a lot of points with Troy may not be the greatest thing to do, especially in this spot. They're sitting at a 15-point favorite, though, because they are the significantly better team. So we will see about that as well. Bellarmine, by the way, as I forgot to mention. Oh, no, I did mention they're an 8-point dog. Excuse me. All right, let's keep going. We got Charleston at Northeastern. I'm trying to just remember which one of these games. No, I mean, there are some of these games. This line is just kind of a little bit misleading, really, though, as Northeastern has a significantly worse-looking record, but it's basically a pick-the-winner line with Charleston being at 1, so it's kind of like what gives here. Charleston's facing a third straight road game, which is not easy to do at all. So the line looks like it's begging you to take Charleston, and I would not oblige, even though it is up from a pick'em to a pick'em with juice. So it looks like the line has moved up on them very slightly, but I don't think I would do that. Northeastern's kind of turned it around. They're coming off an easy win over Stony Brook. You got to think they're going to be focused in this game against Charleston. They did lose only by 2 on the road at Charleston, though. So it is revenge, although Charleston might remember that being a close game. A lot of things going on here. It's a close call here. Also in this conference, Campbell is at NCA&T. They did already beat NCA&T at home barely by 4, but they're facing a third straight road game now. They got Towson, UNC Wilmington, and Charleston to finish off their season. So they have 3 huge games up next against basically the 3 best teams in the conference at this point, I would say, besides them, I guess. I don't think William & Mary really is. I think William & Mary's a team that's overperforming. I think those other 3 teams are all better, and that's who Campbell has up next. So this is a revenge spot for NCA&T, third straight road game for Campbell, and they have 3 huge games up next, so I don't love it for Campbell, but NCA&T, they're a terrible team, and they did just play Charleston decently, even though Charleston did get me the win and covered in that one, but it was a decent performance out of A&T there, so I don't know. I don't know if I would really want to do it. Campbell's down from 6-5 with juice, so some money looks like it is coming in going against Campbell. Again, I do agree with that. I agree with the NCA&T side there, but we will see. Austin Peay is at Queens. You got to think Austin Peay is in a really embarrassed mood. I mean, they are the team that lost to Bellarmine, and not only did they lose to the team that hadn't won in conference, but they lost bad. They lost by almost 30 points, just totally embarrassing. Probably they were looking ahead to Queens and Lipscomb because these are 2 much bigger games. Queens, this is going to be a revenge game as well, as they lost at home already to Queens, and I believe I was on Austin Peay in that game, I think, because I was saying Queens is overrated right now. Man, Austin Peay flying a little bit under the radar, and I got caught. I lost that one. But now this is a revenge spot for Austin Peay, and you're getting points on the road this time, and they're probably the most embarrassed that they're going to be after that horrible game against Bellarmine. So I like Austin Peay in this game. This was close to being a play for me as well. Queens, they're coming off an easy win, though, over Central Arkansas. They didn't really have this game surrounded by anything, so it wasn't really a spot where I'm like, oh, yeah, this is a terrible spot for Queens, and it's their final home game, so I don't really want to do it for that reason either. I don't really want to fade them, but that would be my lean, would be to take the points with Austin Peay, and the market seems to agree with that. It's down from 7.5 to 6.5 with juice on Queens. So that's what we have going on there. Next up is another play for me, Kennesaw State minus 2.5. I'm going to fade UTEP here. UTEP's been hanging around near the top of this Conference USA, and I just don't think they're as good as some of these other teams. They're definitely not as good as Liberty. I think they're probably maybe like the 3rd or 4th best team in this conference, in my opinion. And speaking of Liberty, UTEP is coming off just losing to them, man. That was a tough game. I don't see the graph on this one to see how close this game really was, but UTEP was winning the game at halftime at home, and they wound up losing in the end to Liberty. Now they're coming off that, having to go on the road to face Kennesaw, who they already beat at home. And who do they have up next? Jacksonville State, who they lost to at home as well. So that's not only a revenge spot there. This is a revenge spot for Kennesaw State, but UTEP's next game is revenge for them against Jacksonville State, and it's a game against the team that's atop the conference. So this game for them is sandwiched in, even though I know Kennesaw's right behind them, but still, UTEP has this game sandwiched in between the 2 teams that are atop this conference right now. I think it does qualify as a sandwich spot. They're going on the road. It's revenge, like I said. Kennesaw has the worst-looking record, so people might look at this and think, I'm getting points with UTEP, and they have the somewhat better record here. It looks kind of easy to grab the points. It looks like there might be some value in grabbing the points, and I don't agree with that. As I said, I think UTEP is overperforming a little bit, and I think Kennesaw has been a little bit under the radar. I did win on Kennesaw not too long ago. I forget. It was against Western Kentucky, I think. Was that the game I played them? I forget. I think it was. I don't remember. I know I played them somewhere recently and got the win. I think it was that game. Kennesaw, they're coming off a loss at Sam Houston State. Not the greatest loss. They're coming off a nice blowout win over Louisiana Tech, having to face a second straight road game against a Sam Houston State team that they had already beaten, with UTEP up next. That was not a good spot for Kennesaw. Now that they lost that game, I think this is a bounce-back spot, and it's revenge against UTEP, as I said. And the last time they were at home, they lost the game to Middle Tennessee, so they may want to kind of return to form after that too, because when you see teams go out on the road and then they finish that road trip with not a very good performance and they're coming back home and they also lost their last home game, a lot of times you do see that team show up and be pretty focused in that next game, and I think that's what you're going to get out of Kennesaw here for all those reasons, and because UTEP is ahead of them in the standings as well. So I will do that. KenPom, I believe, is Kennesaw winning this game by, I think, 3. So this one is in line with that. Kennesaw, they definitely like to push the tempo. They like to play fast. They're actually in the top 100 in defensive efficiency on KenPom now, so that's not too bad. And as you can see, he actually has UTEP below them. So he's actually telling you this line is a little bit short. Like, if you add Kennesaw being the better team plus home court, it almost seems like they should be closer to like a 4-point favorite here. UTEP at 23rd in luck index for KenPom, even though I know Kennesaw's in the middle of the pack, but 23rd in luck is really telling you this UTEP team's overperforming a little bit. He's got both teams pretty bad offensively. They're actually similar in offensive and defensive rankings, really. But Kennesaw is going to try to push the pace a little bit more than UTEP likes to play. They play on the faster side, but not as fast. And UTEP a little bit worse defensively as well, though not by much. But I think the spot is what really gives you that play there on Kennesaw. So that is play number 2 that I have here. And New Mexico State is at Jacksonville State, also in this conference here. Jacksonville State coming off a nice win in a second straight road game against Louisiana Tech, bouncing back from that loss at Sam Houston. Now they got New Mexico State. They're coming off that big win over Louisiana Tech, man. New Mexico State, they already beat them on the road, so this is road revenge for New Mexico State. And Jacksonville State has UTEP and Liberty up next. And I believe they... what have they? Oh, no. They actually beat both of those teams already, which is crazy. So both of those teams are really going to be gunning for them in revenge spots. But so those are both big games, in my opinion, bigger than this New Mexico State game. As New Mexico State's kind of fallen off a bit, and they're in mediocrity right now. But New Mexico State's coming off a blowout win, but I don't think they're going to be overconfident because they were on a horrible stretch, losing 6 of 7. But they lost to some pretty good teams in there. Some of the better teams in the conference all mixed in there. It wasn't an easy schedule for New Mexico State throughout that stretch there, even though a lot of the games were at home, which isn't that great. But that win over FIU, I think, is going to give them some newfound confidence coming into this one. It may give them new momentum, propelling them forward, breaking that losing momentum. So not a play for me, but I like New Mexico State if you asked me what my opinion was in this game, although Jacksonville State's up from 5 to 6. So again, the market seems to disagree with me a little bit on that, but we will see. North Alabama and Lipscomb, I mean, this is a game between the two teams that are atop the A-Sun. It's going to be a good game, but Lipscomb is the big favorite here, and I believe this is revenge as well, because I believe North Alabama won the game at North Alabama earlier this year. Lipscomb up from 5.5 to 6, and Lipscomb's coming off that loss at Eastern Kentucky, failing to get revenge there. They may have been looking ahead to this game. This is a big game. Big game for both teams, and I think Lipscomb might be even a little bit more motivated here, because not only is it revenge, but this is, the conference is really, number one, the 1 seed in the conference is really on the line here, although I forget if the A-Sun plays at the home team's venue or not, because that would make it even, in their conference tournament, because that would make it even more important to try to get the 1 seed here, but they may play it in a neutral site. I actually forget, but I think they don't, actually. I think they play... At least the earlier games in the tournament, I think, are at the home sites of the teams, but maybe the final is on a neutral. I forget what they do. But Lipscomb, they're battling to try to get back into that 1 seed. I do think they're the best team in this conference. This is a big game. It's at home. It's revenge as well. So my lean would be to Lipscomb in that one. Again, we'll see what happens there. North Alabama, neither team is coming off a big game. North Alabama's got a ton of momentum coming into this game right now, but I still think Lipscomb is the better team, and it looks like you may be getting value taking the points with North Alabama because they're in some bracketologies. They're atop the conference right now. They have the slightly better record, and they're getting points, so it kind of looks tempting to maybe look North Alabama's way, and I would not agree with it. If I was going to play that game, I would lay it with Lipscomb. USC is at Maryland. We have this random Big Ten matchup here on Fox Sports 1. And these Big Ten matchups tonight are both double-digit spreads. I mean, USC having to go out to the East Coast again. It just doesn't look good for USC in this game, man. I just don't think it's a very good spot for them having to travel out to the East Coast. Maryland has been hot right now. They do have Michigan State up next, so you could argue maybe that's going to be a look ahead for them. But USC having to go to an unfamiliar location and travel cross-country again, don't love the spot that they're in. Maryland is definitely the superior team, and I think Maryland is actually being a little bit underranked still, even though they are in the rankings. I think they're probably like a top 15 team maybe at this point. This Maryland team is definitely good. They're up from 10 to 10.5 here. I mean, if I was going to look at that game, I'd probably be looking towards laying the points with Maryland. I'm not going to touch it, though. I mean, that's not something I want to do. Wichita State's coming off a big win, upset win over Memphis. That was a huge win. The shocking upset of Memphis. Although, as I tell you, this Memphis team, they're very turnover prone. I mean, both teams kind of turn the ball over in that game, but still, Memphis, I don't think they're as good as their ranking indicates. They're not as good as they look. They're not a very disciplined team. They're in a very bad conference. Wichita, I think, is actually better than you think that they are. Looking at their records, they were able to get that win in overtime. Now I think it's a little bit of a letdown spot going to FAU. FAU is the better team, and they're actually a big favorite here, and more so than you would probably think. Let me see. They're up from 6.5 to 7.5 here, so the line has actually moved up on FAU, probably because thinking that it is a letdown spot that Wichita is in, and I agree that it is. FAU is on a nice run right now, winning 5 straight games, although mostly against some not great teams, but they did go on the road and upset Temple in their last game. So now they're coming off a big win, and they have Memphis up next in 3 days. So I don't love the spot here, and that's a revenge spot, as Memphis really embarrassed them on their own floor. They've not faced Wichita yet this year, so I'm going to just hold off on this one because FAU, I think, could potentially get caught in the look-ahead here. I think the letdown spot that Wichita is in, I think, is the more significant situational factor here, but because of the FAU also coming off a big game and having a big game up next, and North Texas up after that, and that's also a revenge spot. So 2 games against the top 2 teams in the conference, both in revenge spots up next. I'll just stay away from that one too. But I would slightly lean to fading Wichita still, even given all that. Next up, we got my final play, which is out in the Big Sky, and that's Idaho State minus 125 on the money line. No, I'm not laying 125 points. Portland State, I just really don't think they're as good as they look, as their record looks. They're starting to falter a little bit, but now they're coming off their biggest win of the season, man. They just beat Northern Colorado, who's the team that was atop the conference, and they knocked them down. And now Northern Colorado's behind Montana, even though I think Northern Colorado is still the best team in the Big Sky. Portland State, I'm not convinced that they're the 3rd best team in this conference, man. I don't think they're as good as their record would indicate. I think they're overperforming a little bit, and they already beat this Idaho State team pretty easily at home by whatever that is, 17 points. So this is a revenge spot for Idaho State as well, and Portland State's coming off their biggest win of the season. So I don't love the spot that Portland State is in. I think it's a letdown spot. They do only have Weber State up next, which normally would be a big game, but Weber State just not very good this year, so that may not be a look ahead, but it is still a letdown spot. It is still revenge for Idaho State, and I think this is a positive spot for Idaho State, man. They're coming off 3 straight road games. They had to play both Montana teams. At Montana, I mean, that's not an easy place to go, man. I mean, Montana's a good team. I mean, I'm not going to knock them for that loss. Then coming off that game, they turn around and they lost to Montana State as well. Which Montana State's kind of moving up as well. Montana State had won this conference a couple of times recently. They're definitely not as good this year, though, and Idaho State fell behind them because of that loss. But now because Idaho State's coming off 2 straight losses, that last game was against a team that's not that great. They're returning home. Now it's a revenge spot, and they lost their last game at home to Northern Colorado. So if the public is going to look at this, they're going to think, well, Idaho State lost to Northern Colorado, and Portland State just beat Northern Colorado. And this is basically a pick-the-winner situation here. You're actually getting some points on Portland State here. And Portland State has the better record, too. So it looks really easy to take Portland State here. And, again, that's not the way that it works. And I think this is definitely a focus spot for Idaho State, man. Like I said, when you're coming off some road losses and your last home game was also a loss, and now you're returning home, that's like one of the biggest focus spots that you can have in college basketball. So I like all that. I'm on the Idaho State side in this one. Let me see. Idaho State also plays really slow, and Portland State is actually more of a fast team. Idaho State also way down in Ken Palm's luck index at 332nd. So he's telling you they're a little bit better than they actually look. They're not very good. I mean, obviously, we're dealing with the Big Sky. Neither of these teams are good. But and Idaho State is actually the worst of these two teams slightly, but still, they're going to try to slow the pace down here. Portland State, yes, I know they're the better defense, but both teams struggle offensively. And if you're going to get a slow-down game, that's not the type of game that Portland State likes to play. Portland State, higher up in Ken Palm's luck index, like I said, at 112th. They were higher than that at some point. So Ken Palm is telling you they're not as good as they look, and Idaho State is not quite as bad as they look, even though, yes, Portland State is still the better team. But even so, that's what we got going on in that game. And then for the rest of the slate, I don't think there's a whole lot of interest here necessarily. I mean, UC Irvine is actually only like a 6.5 point favorite against Cal State Northridge. So that game's going to be interesting. At least it should be a decent game. UC San Diego, it'll be fun to see them finally make the tournament, man, as they are pretty new to Division I. This might even be the first year they're even eligible to make the tournament, and they might do it. That UC San Diego team, they're fast-paced, crazy offense, even though Irvine's a very good defensive team. But one of those teams should win the conference, we'll see. And let's talk about NBA before I get out here. We got NBA back in action. And again, like I said yesterday, when you look at these teams coming out of the All-Star break, you want to look to kind of fade teams that went into the All-Star break hot, because the All-Star break can stop that momentum. And you want to kind of look for teams that went into the All-Star break not on a good note, because they tend to use that break to fix things. So first up, I'm going to play the Philadelphia 76ers, and I know this has not worked out for me very well playing the Sixers, but we're taking them as a big underdog here against my Boston Celtics. I think the spot is bad for the Celtics, man. I mean, they went into the break hot. I mean, they won 3 in a row, and they won whatever that is, 7 of their last 8 games, all wins. Now they're coming out of the All-Star break after that. They had some guys in the All-Star game. They're coming out of that, and they have the New York Knicks up next, which I believe is tomorrow. Or no, it's not. It's Sunday, excuse me. But the Knicks, even though I know they just blew the Knicks out, I think that's a bigger game for them, man. Even though, yes, they beat Philadelphia on the road as well, and Philadelphia almost beat them, but Philadelphia had like none of their starters. Embiid and George were both out in that game, and they're both supposed to play, even though George has like a brace on his finger because he injured his finger, but I believe he is playing. Embiid is playing, so this Philadelphia team is going to be more intact, certainly, than it was in that other game. And in that game, even without their starters, but of course they took the Celtics by surprise, they were winning that game, blowing the Celtics out, and the Celtics had like the biggest comeback in years in the NBA, which is pretty embarrassing for Philadelphia, really. When you're blowing the Celtics out and you have them completely on the ropes, and then you lose the game, you got to think Philadelphia, they're going to want to atone for that. And they were like a 12.5 point dog in that one. Now they're a 7.5 point dog here, which is because Embiid and George should play in this game. But I don't think this is a good spot for the Celtics at all. And I think the Knicks game up next is going to be the bigger game. I mean, Philadelphia is so much further behind. As you can see here, the Knicks are pretty close behind the Celtics still. So that game means more. And Philadelphia was awful going into the All-Star break, losing 5 games in a row. So I think they may be using that break to get a little bit healthy. They're getting these guys back, even though, yeah, I mean, debatably it's a reverse injured player spot if those guys are out in some of those games. But they're so used to these guys being in and out of the lineup. They've been in and out for like a lot of the stretch. So it's not like it's been like a long layoff for those guys and they're just finally coming back. So I think the Sixers is the right side in this game. Let's see what we got here. Celtics down from 8 to 7, 82% of tickets, 80% of the cash. They're a very public road favorite here. I like the Sixers in that one. Let's see. And then my other play is right up here up next. Orlando -1. I'm not going to go money line on NBA. You know, I said with these small favorites, I started doing money lines in college basketball. NBA, I think the jury's still out because NBA is just a higher scoring game. So I think it's less beneficial to do it in that case. Orlando's sitting at 1.5 now, 69% of the cash on them, 56% of tickets on the other side on Atlanta. Orlando, they did win their last game going into the All-Star break, but it was against Charlotte. And I know Charlotte did win last night, but it's like, who cares, kind of. This is a quick road revenge spot for Orlando, man, so I do like this one for that reason. They just lost at home the game before that to Atlanta. Now they get to come out of the break, and that break might help them kind of get healthy, too, because Orlando, even though they had Wagner and Banchero back, they just were not meshing. And maybe this break will help them like focus more and like regain some more of that chemistry, man. Hopefully that would be the case there, because this Orlando team is a lot better than this record would tell you. Suggs is still not going to be back yet. I believe he's targeting tomorrow to come back, but they're used to playing without him right now. Atlanta, I mean, they went into the break hot. They'd won 3 games in a row, and then they played this crazy overtime game against New York where both teams got up into the 140s. Just absolutely insane. So if they were playing again right away after that, I would like fading them, but I still like fading them because I think that's the type of game that can kind of linger into the All-Star break. And that was still a really good performance from Atlanta. So it's like, how is that break going to help you? Like, what do you have to fix when in your last game you played really well against the Knicks? So for all those reasons, yeah, I like Orlando here. And the odds makers are telling you they're enough the better team that they're favored on the road, even though Atlanta did just beat them in Orlando. I think it's a nice road revenge spot for the better team. You're going to get the focus team from Orlando in that one, in my opinion. That would be what I would do. Looking at that game, and some of these games are just, I don't love them. The Knicks, I mean, because they have the Celtics up next, and they went into the break hot off of that win against Atlanta as well, I think they might look right past Chicago here. So I would only look to take the points with the Bulls. And the Bulls went into the break on a bunch of losses in a row. Haven't been playing well. What was I looking at? Yeah, Knicks down from 13.5 to 12.5, 53% it takes 68% of the cash. Line looks like it is moving down, though. If I was going to play this game, I would only grab the points with Chicago there. I also like the Clippers, and it's only because Giannis is probably returning in this game from Milwaukee. Though you got to look, because I don't know if the Clippers would be a road favorite if he really was returning. So you got to pay attention to that, because Giannis has been out since before the break. So that's a situation where your star player's been out for a while. And his first game back, I think there's going to be some rust there, and you got to redevelop that chemistry. So I would only look to fade Milwaukee in his first game back, but we will see. And then we have Charlotte at Denver. Charlotte and LA both played yesterday, man, so I don't like the spot for either of them because they're completely unrested because they both played yesterday and they both have to travel. So I would lean to both Portland and Denver in these games, but I think Denver is the stronger play because Charlotte pulled off the double-digit upset against the Lakers last night. I told you, man, I leaned to Charlotte in that game. I kind of wish I played it, but the Lakers with Luka, I mean, they really aren't meshing yet, and their defense is worse. And now Charlotte's coming off that. Nuggets are already up from 14.5 to 16 with juice. 58% of the cash on them, 50% of the tickets evenly split. My only hesitation is that Denver hasn't played since before the All-Star break. So yes, it means they're rested, but it also means they could be rusty because they went in really hot. They were one of the hottest teams, winning a ton of games leading into the All-Star break. So that's my one hesitation there. But the spot for Charlotte is awful. They just upset that hyped Lakers team last night. No rest, and they have to go into elevation. So I would only lay it with Denver, but that's going to do it for that. And then we do have hockey tonight, which I don't believe I'll be going to the Four Nations game. I believe Canada is actually a slight favorite against the U.S., but the U.S. is coming off a bad performance against Sweden. But remember, the U.S. didn't need to win that game. So that's what we're looking at there. The U.S., they were already locked into this game, so they didn't play their starting goalie, Hellebuck. He should be back in net this time. Ottinger played in that game. So they're playing their best goalie. He's the best goalie in the NHL. So the U.S. does have the goaltender advantage and the defensive advantage. Most of their guys should be there. Canada does have the better offense. Canada is the higher scoring team, though, so they may draw a little bit of the public attention just because of that. And they're coming off that high scoring game against Finland. But they needed to win that to get into this, too. So U.S. did not need to win. So they should be a little bit more rested because of that, because they didn't need to win that game. And they look worse than they actually are because of that. And they have the better goalie, like I said, better defense. So I'm slightly leaning to the U.S., even though it is revenge for Canada. But, both of these teams want to win this game. It's the final. They're both going to show up. So slightly into the U.S. That's going to do it for me. My plays one more time. College basketball, UMass-Lowell -6.5. Kennesaw -2.5. Idaho State money line -125. Sixers +7.5 in the NBA. And Orlando in the NBA -1. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Tower Gang Podcast. Patreon.com/Tower Gang, as we're now paywalling more content. Top Lobster has the idea. But if you guys love us, I mean, you'll throw us a little bit of money, right, to see some extra content from us. So go check that out. That's going to do it. Tower Gang for life, baby. And better off dead. Peace.